All right, we are ready to begin.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Forum for Candidates for the Clerk of Evanston. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Evanston and the Evanston Public Library. My name is Jennifer O'Neill, and I'm the president of the Evanston League. The League of Women Voters is a national, nonpartisan political organization dedicated to promoting the active and informed participation of citizens in government. The League takes positions on issues, but neither endorses nor opposes candidates for public office. This forum is being recorded and will be available on demand on YouTube with links to the video on the League website. In addition to questions from League members and community partners, the public was invited to submit questions to this forum. The deadline for questions was 48 hours prior to the event. The League has reviewed the questions for appropriateness for the office to ensure that questions are directed to all candidates and to eliminate duplication. Following a primary election in February, candidates on the ballot for the general election and with us this evening are Cynthia Beebe and Stephanie Mendoza. Our moderator this evening is Jan Dorner of Chicago. Jan is currently the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Elmhurst and vice president of the Illinois League. She's been observing for her local school district for the last 30 years, is a past president of the State League, and an experienced moderator. So we're pleased to have you, Jan. Take it away.
Thank you, Jennifer. To review the format for this forum, each candidate will present a 90-second introductory statement. The order to start is alphabetical. Then questions will be asked and each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to respond in alternating order. Closing statements will be 90 seconds. A League member will keep time, and candidates, I will ask you to adhere to the time limits. The candidates have not been provided the questions before this forum. So let's get started. And Cynthia Beebe, would you please start with your opening statement? 90 seconds.
My name is Cynthia Beebe, and I've lived in Evanston's 7th Ward for 37 years. I have 2 degrees from Northwestern, an undergraduate degree in English and American Literature, and a master's from Medill in journalism. In 1987, I was one of the first women hired by the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to work as a special agent. I worked there for 27 years before retiring in 2014 as a senior special agent. I have extensive experience working with local, state, and federal agencies and a proven track record of success working in government. I recently published a memoir about my career. It came out last year. My son, Sam, is a senior at Evanston High School. When he was little, I coached him in team sports at the YMCA, then later for Evanston baseball and Evanston soccer. I was also on the PTA board at Kingsley and Haven. I'm honored to be endorsed by Elizabeth Tisdall, former mayor, Candace Chow, former president of the District 65 School Board, Dolores Holmes, former 5th Ward Alderman, and Rodney Green, former city clerk. On February 23rd, I received 1,076 write-in votes, which is more than 10% of all votes cast, which was a historic number. Because of that, my name will be printed on the ballot for the April 6th election for Evanston City Clerk. I would appreciate it if you would consider voting for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, your opening statement, 90 seconds.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Mendoza. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and ella. I'm a 9th Ward resident. I've been a 9th Ward resident for the past 10 years, and I'm raising my 3 children here who attend Washington School. I have a political science degree from Loyola University and a minor in Spanish literature. I'm the daughter of immigrants who immigrated to this country, like many people, to provide my brothers and I a better life. I'm running for city clerk because I've seen what good government and bad government can do for our communities. I've been helping fight to get community members involved in their local elections for the past 7 years. And I have worked in every suburb and, well, most suburbs from about the north side to the south side of Chicago. I am happy to call myself a political organizer and a community organizer. And I'm running for clerk because I think it's time for us to get our most underserved community members involved in our local government to make sure that our community represents what we want it to look like in the future. I'm a former prevention specialist at Connections for the Homeless and the director of community outreach for Evanston Latinos. I have seen how paramount it is to focus on connecting our city government to our historically underserved community members and our increasing multilingual community members. And I'm proudly endorsed by Jan Schakowsky, Laura Fine, Jennifer Gon-Gershwitz, and our commissioners, Cam Davis and Josina Morita, along with many other community organizations.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, please outline and explain your two most important priorities for the office of City Clerk if you are elected.
Yes, for me, I think we're in a time where it's very important to bring a focus of community outreach back to the clerk's office, making sure that our community members understand and know how to utilize the office and that the office is serving them and it's providing a connection between them, our city staff, and our elected officials. I have been a liaison for a very long time within the community in my work in the nonprofit community, and this is a skill I plan to bring over to the clerk's office. I also believe it's going to be very important to bring healing to our community and create broader transparency and make sure that our community members feel valued and feel heard, and make sure that their communications are brought to our city staff and our city elected officials. I want to make sure that they know how to use FOIA and that we are properly following the Open Meetings Act 2 during our city council meetings. So I think the two priorities right now would definitely be increased transparency and a focus on community outreach and bringing a focus back on community in the clerk's office.
Thank you. Cynthia Beebe, your two most important priorities.
I would say my most important priority is to reestablish the city clerk's office as a professional, welcoming office that serves all of the residents, officials, and staff. I think we have to rebuild the office and turn it into an efficient, effective, professional office that responds well to people's questions, that gets things done, and that is a place where everyone can come and find out what it is they need to know, where the clerk does what they need to do for elected officials and for the residents. I also think we are facing, our city government is facing a period of great transition. We have a new mayor, we'll have at least 3 new council members, a new city clerk. We also have to deal with COVID-19 and the overall issue of racial inequality. And I think because of that, again, we need to reestablish the clerk's office as a professional office that can help the city function effectively, and so the clerk can become a valuable asset to the city.
Thank you. Candidate Beebe, the Illinois state statute describes the responsibility of a city clerk as primarily administrative. Do you plan to expand the duties beyond the statute? If so, in what ways? And if not, why not?
Well, I think without a doubt, the most important thing the city clerk has to do day in and day out is manage the city's business records. And we have to be able to do that efficiently and effectively so that council members, for example, can count on transcripts of former of earlier conversations being in front of them, and so that they can do the work they need to do, things like that. So things that have to get done in a timely manner need to be done in a timely manner, and they need to be done accurately and efficiently. But also the city clerk is also the local election official. And I think it's imperative that we clarify the election rules for people running for office so that there's no more of people running for office who get kicked off the ballot because they don't understand something or they use the wrong stapler or whatever. But I also think that voters have to know what the heck is going on in upcoming elections. So I know in this election, for example, there were questions about how many votes did certain candidates need to go forward, and how many people had to run for there to be a primary. And some of these questions were not answered even up until after the election. I think voters need to know what is happening, and I think people running for office need to know what is happening. And I want to encourage and make it easier for people to run for office.
Thank you. Candidate Mendoza, the same question.
Yes, I believe that we, of course, have to follow the state statute and make sure that we are fulfilling our duties within the office and making sure those are clear and accessible to our community members. Um, and, uh, and another thing too is with being the election official for the city, you also have to have a really good understanding on how to get on the ballot, what amount of signatures you need, and that is all also in state statute, and it's a task that I've proven that I know how to follow and that I clearly knew how to read. And it is important for whoever is the next clerk that understands how to follow those rules, and in order to be able to teach them to others. I've helped many people get on the ballot professionally for a really long time, and that is something I'm excited to be able to help other Evanstonians do, especially when they want to represent their communities. I think it is really important, especially now, as we're seeing a lot of underrepresentation for communities of color within our city government, that we make the clerk's office as accessible as possible to people wanting to run for office. I also think that as the FOIA official, making sure that people know how to access information and know how to access records from the clerk and understand how to make those requests accurately in order for them to get their information in a timely manner, and timely as well as making sure that, you know, our records are digitalized and our services are accessible online. Many community members have told me that this is something that they want.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, what actions will you take to increase voter registration and voter turnout in elections, particularly municipal elections?
Yes, one of the things I've been talking about since I decided to run is that I want to make sure we're bringing the clerk's office to every corner of Evanston. I think it's very important that our nonprofit communities, our communities of worship, and community members know that they can rely on the clerk's office and that they can find us throughout the city. When I used to work at Connections for the Homeless, we had to rely on other organizations to come and register our homeless population to vote, when in fact the clerk's office could have been doing this and providing the services in person at the clerk's office and making sure that our homeless population is registered to vote, but also making sure that we're in our recreational centers, we attend events. And we're also sending timely communications about the services that we do have accessible. I know there was a big issue this time around with not having a drop box in the clerk's office, and making sure people understand, you know, what services are available when they come to vote, and making sure that we are present throughout the community in order to get people registered to vote. I also plan on using texting systems in order to turn out our community to vote, making sure we remind them that there's an election going on and when they can utilize the early voting sites, and sending them information about where their polling place is at, as well as sending daily communications, hopefully through our bulletins, making sure it's published, and asking other staff to collaborate with us.
Thank you. Cynthia Beebe, same question.
I agree with Stephanie Mendoza that that is essential to reach out to the community far more assertively than we do, to reach out to other organizations and to work with members of the community. I also think it's absolutely essential that we, the clerk's office, provides clarity to voters and, again, people thinking of running for office on when they vote and where they vote. We used to get in the mail little notices. You are in a certain ward, in a certain precinct, and you vote at this location, and you can vote from these hours. I realize the mail is a little bit old-fashioned to some people, but I do think that we should bring that back. And people, right now, to find out where your polling place is, you have to go to the Cook County Clerk's website. And while it's not a bad website, it can be a little bit awkward. I would like it to make it much easier for Evanston residents to find out on Evanston websites where their polling places are, where they vote. And again, the hours of early voting, how to mail in ballots. And I think increasing voter registration is essential. I would particularly like to focus on increasing the registration for young people.
Thank you. Cynthia Beebe, City Council appoints the Freedom of Information Act officer or officers. How do you believe this role should be structured? And how should you be responsible for responding to FOIA requests?
Well, the FOIA requests, I think people need to understand that that is a legal document. And as such, we have to follow the law. I understand that City Council has, in the last council, a significant number of FOIA requests were removed from the authority of the city clerk's office and placed into the hands of other people within the Evanston government. Within the clerk's office, whatever FOIA requests we are responsible for, I would work very hard to ensure that people get an accurate and a rapid response. If they have trouble with how to file or how to word their FOIA request, I would help them with that. I would also, if people need to file a FOIA request with other offices within the Evanston city government, as far as I'm concerned, they can still come to ask me questions. I worked with FOIA for many years as a federal agent. I'm very familiar with it. It is a fantastic tool as a journalist, in addition to an agent. It is a great tool, and we should residents should and can take advantage of it. But we have to respect the fact that it is part of a legal system. If people are denied their request, the request can be resubmitted. It can be appealed to the city, and it can also be appealed to the state, depending on how important getting an answer is to the person making the request. So I think FOIA has to be treated for what it is, which is a legal document that follows a legal system.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, same question.
Yes, and I think Cynthia spoke to this, that, I really do want to work on bringing back services to the clerk's office. One of those is FOIA request. The reality is that, FOIA is one of the tools our community can use to make sure that our city is being transparent and that they have a full trust in our community. And I really do want to work with the next council if they so wish to put that service back into the clerk's office. I think it's essential to restoring trust into our community that it is in the clerk's office. One of the things about FOIA too is that all of the requests are done through Next Request through our city's website. But I want to make sure that people, when they do want to come and do those in person, that they are allowed to, and we are able to walk them through that process. And also hopefully being able to take FOIA requests when someone wants to request something over the phone, which is I think it's essential for people who may have difficulties with writing or accessing technology, or maybe mobility issues to getting to the clerk's office. One of the things I do want to do is provide education about how to use Next Request and how to access Next Request. I think this is something that people don't really have a good understanding about, and that a lot of information and requests that have made are actually there. They're public. You can see them, and hopefully making sure that the records that are requested, we have them stored, so just in case other people want to see them.
Thank you. Candidate Mendoza, what steps will you take to develop a positive working relationship with other elected city officials, and how will you interact with other city staff?
Yeah, so one of the things about the work that I do now is I actually already work a lot with our local elected officials and our city staff. Through my work at Evanston Latinos, I have collaborated with my alderwoman Cecily Flemings and city staff in our health department to pass a community member fund. And I'm currently working on a language access policy with our Equity and Empowerment Commission. And we have some alderperson that has been very involved in that, and some city staff. So this is something that I already do, and I am proud that I am already cultivating good relationships. I have worked a lot with the Senior Services Department and the Youth Services Department to make sure we do outreach with our communities that are not being represented. So I want to continue on with working with those people and other people within the city and creating positive working relationships with everyone. I think it just benefits our city, and we get more work done when we do that. Thank you.
Thanks. Candidate Beebe, same question.
Well, I think I have always worked and played well with others. I think it's something that comes naturally and it's easy for me. I know Daniel Biss a little bit. I like him very much. I don't know anyone on the city council, but I think this goes back to creating a professional environment in the clerk's office, a welcoming environment where we all want to get things done together. And the best way to get things done is by working together. It doesn't mean that everyone, always sits around and sings Kumbaya together. You have to compromise. But I believe strongly that you get a lot farther working together than you do fighting with people. And I played team sports. I coached team sports. I was captain of team sports. I believe very much in playing with the team. I would work to try to make Evanston more efficient and more effective. Again, I believe we're coming into a very difficult 4 years dealing with COVID, dealing with racial inequality, in addition to the normal business that the city has to deal with. And I think having someone with my experience and my professional background, my willingness to work with people, to listen to what people need and to help them. I have a lot of experience. I can use my professional experience to help get things done. I'm very organized. I'm very goal-oriented. And the whole point would be to make Evanston government function more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Beebe, Evanston has a tight city budget and the clerk's office is a modest part of it. How will you keep expenses within the budget? Well,
that's actually a great question. And I personally don't think that would be terribly difficult to do. I have to admit, I don't know what all the expenses are for the clerk's office, other than personnel. And of course, you have to run an office. But I think so much of what we are going to do depends on personal relations. It depends on being able to write. It depends on being able to organize and get things done. I don't know, I can't foresee any particularly large expenditures for the clerk's office that might break the budget in any way. I don't know of anything that I would not be ordering, a $15,000 chair or anything silly like that. So I would plan on working within the budget. And as far as I know, I wouldn't have any reason to believe that there would be any difficult with that at all.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, same question.
Yes, well, the city budget does, most of it is composed of staffing. But one of the things that I do and have proposed, and people can find this on my website, mendozaforclerk.com, is that I do want to think about ways to bring in revenue to the office. I really do believe over the last few years, the clerk's budget has been cut, and a lot of those cuts have come from educational opportunities for staff. And I really do believe in educational empowerment for our for our clerk staff. I want to make sure that we have the most trained and most efficient staff in the clerk's office, and I do want to think of ways to bring revenue into the office in order to not make any more need for more revenue a burden on the city and our community. And one of those revenue streams that I would like to see is making sure that to see if there's services that we can bring back, maybe like I know vital records, the health department used to do, they no longer do, seeing if maybe we could do that in the clerk's office. And if we can't do that, see if we can do marriages, or hopefully, making sure passport services come back into the clerk's office, to see if we can to promote that throughout the city, to make sure people understand that every time they get a passport in the clerk's office, we actually get to keep that processing fee, and that's money that could come into the clerk's office.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, what improvement would you like to make, if any, to the clerk's office record-keeping systems?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do want to do is I want to move us into the century, and I want to make sure that all of our services are available online. I just think it's something that is essential. If people don't have to drive down to the clerk's office in order to get services provided to them, I think that's a win-win for everybody, and our staff can focus on processing those requests and making sure that people have their information in a timely manner. Another thing that I want to do is making sure that records are easily accessed online. If you go into the clerk's office now and you're trying to find minutes from like 1999, you literally have to scroll through and try to find those records. So I want to make sure that those are easily searchable, that people can also find things like committee meeting minutes. And not only that, but I want to create a way for us to be able to track the ordinances and different resolutions throughout a process. So, when they're brought up in committee, all the way through when they're passed at city council meetings. I think it's essential that we bring the office into the century. And, I think I will provide a unique experience when it comes to technology. It's something that I work a lot with data, and it's something that I have done professionally, work a lot with a lot of data, running Cook County wide elections and collaborating with people statewide. So, I just want to make it really easy for people to find information, because I can tell you, even myself, when I was trying to work on the community member fund and other things, it was hard to see where that was at in the process.
Thank you. Cynthia Beebe, same question.
Could I ask you to please repeat the question for me?
Sure.
Thank you.
What improvements would you like to make, if any, to the clerk's office record keeping systems?
Somewhat in the same vein of Stephanie Mendoza, I have to agree that we have got to bring our computer and internet services up to the modern age and to make them easier to work. I also think we, Evanston, have to take more responsibility for the records, and not, but certainly election records, for example, and not always rely on Cook County. I think we have to have clarity within our records, and we need to provide, the city clerk's office needs to provide information to the city. We need to provide basic information to residents, to officials, to staff, so that many questions can be answered if we put out a list, whether it's about election, about other topics, with the steps involved. Okay, if you want to do X, this is how you do it. And these are basic issues, and it's an easy way. We should not always have to wait for questions to come to us. We should take an assertive role in putting information out to the public. And I agree that we have to bring our Evanston's internet into the modern age. I do think we should try to have a Spanish language section. Mr. Gomez, the deputy clerk, is fluent in Spanish. But reaching out to the community, and it's up to the clerk to provide information to the city, and of course to answer people's questions and solve people's problems.
Thank you. Candidate Beebe, what changes will you implement to ensure that the city clerk's office provides equitable access and services to all Evanstonians?
Well, I think probably the most important thing to do is for me as the city clerk to go out into the community, to all 9 wards, to community centers, to churches, to schools, to reach out to people, kind of in the way I was answering before. I think it's up to us, the clerk's office, to go out to reach out to people. We don't always have to wait for people to come to us. I think asking people what they want and what they need, being respectful of people's time. So if someone comes to the clerk's office with a question, we should have an answer, or if they have a problem, we should help them solve that. We need to work with communities of color by going out and talking with people, again, and finding out what it is that they want, what help that they need, and what we can do to help them. I guess that's really it. It's up to us to go out to the community rather than always wait for the community to come to us. It's up to us to make those changes.
Thank you. Candidate Mendoza, same question.
Yes, as a person of color myself, as a Latina, and my first language is actually Spanish, I'm a Spanish speaker. I feel like I bring a unique perspective when it comes to racial equity because I have the lived experience that only someone who has walked in those in that road and that path uniquely understands. One of the things that I do think it's important, and one of the first things that I want to do if I become clerk is make sure that our staff has racial equity training. I myself have taken racial equity classes and did the one. I was part of the first cohort. It's the Spanish Seed for District 65, which was unique and in many, many ways. And the thing is that we have to make sure that our staff has equity training because they also have to be ready to serve our communities of color. It's not one thing to just say we as city council, right, or as city clerks or city staff, we're going to provide services or enhance services to our community of colors. If when they come to our offices, we don't have cultural competency, we don't have language access, we don't understand their unique experiences, and then we are driving them away from being able to reach out to us. So I think the number one thing is making sure that our staff has continuous equity training so that we are there to serve all our community members, especially our community members of color, and that we are there to empower them, elevate them as soon as they walk in through the door. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, what is your goal for producing minutes of council meetings in a timely way, and how will you accomplish this?
Yes. So one of the things that I want to make sure that we have all the right technology, right, to be able to record minutes and meetings. And I also want to make sure that that's the first thing, right, that we do as soon as a meeting is over, that we are right away. Our first task is to produce those minutes and making sure they're in the hands of our elected officials. And because they also need the information on time in order to know what's going on and be able to look through them in order to approve them in our next city council meeting. So making sure those are handed in on time, especially our executive session meetings that are recorded, because those are actually, if we don't record them, right, there's no record. It's only the record of the clerk. Our regular city council meetings are obviously, those are recorded and placed on YouTube and through social media, but especially our executive session meetings, those are extremely important that we gather that information, that we produce those minutes on time. And because then those minutes actually can be reviewed after a certain period of time, and then the council decides whether or not those are ready to be made public. So, making sure those are turned in on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Beebe, same question.
Yes, much of what the clerk does is provide public information to the public. I think getting records out in a timely manner is really simply a matter of habit. It should not be a difficult thing to do. It makes it a priority. There's nothing more important to the clerk's office than managing the city's business records, managing the city's records. We have a budget of approximately 350 million people. We have $350 million, sorry. We have about 75,000 people who live in Evanston. We're certainly not the size of Chicago, but we are a good sized city, and we need capable administrators handling business records, handling records, providing information to the public that they are entitled to have for executive sessions. It's crucial that we take good records and write up our reports well as a matter of record. Years from now, they will be important to the history of our city. I will also make every single effort as a trained investigator to go back and find the records that are missing from the past and see if I can find them somewhere, because they're a record of our city. Just to make it a habit to get things done on time and to get things done well, to run a professional office.
Thank you. Cynthia Beebe, how have you learned about the responsibilities of the clerk, and what further actions will you take to prepare for the position if you win the election?
I've learned about the responsibilities for the clerk by talking to several former clerks in depth. Also, the League of Women Voters came out with a very fine, detailed report on their views on the city clerk's position and how they think it could be effectively run. I've read that report several times. I've talked with people currently in the government about in the Evanston government, about what they are looking for help from the city government. If I am elected, I will talk to everyone that I could possibly, who will be willing to talk to me to find out what they need and what they want, and the best way to get it done. Working together with people. I think it's essential that we communicate well with each other. I will make it a point to do that. And I am a lover of knowledge. I will find out everything there is to know about the clerk's office. And if the council and the mayor want to expand the roles of the clerk's office and what the clerk does, I will happily go along with that and find out what it is that they want. But basically by doing research and talking to people and then doing some more research and studying, just like college.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, same question.
Yes, I've read the state statute for to just know what the state requires of the clerks. And then after doing that, I also spoke to other former clerks and see how they interpreted the job. I think the state statute was one thing, and then as we know, right, it's all of that is interpreted in different ways depending on who you talk to. So I talked to 4 of our former clerks and have gathered knowledge from them and advice, and what they see are essential services that were lost or that should be back, and so getting knowledge through them. I've also done my own research, right? Making sure that I've always watched our city council meetings online, look at the different changes that have happened within the clerk's office. That's one of the unique things when you go back and do research about the clerk's office, is that you get to see the changes to the clerk's office over time. And I have a beautiful timeline, if anybody ever wants it, of the changes and when services were moved away from the clerk's office and into other departments. So those are the steps that I've taken to find out more about the clerk's office, along with talking to different people. I have the privilege of knowing people that worked for our county clerk too, so talking to them as well.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, what are your plans to ensure that your office communicates effectively with all Evanstonians?
Yeah, so one of the things that and I spoke about this before, I want to make sure we bring the clerk's office to every corner of Evanston. When we can be present at community events, when we can be, maybe provide some hours here and there, different recreational centers, so people understand and get, they can apply for a handicap card, or they can submit a FOIA request or register to vote, maybe ask a question about the services of the clerk's office. I also want to make sure we're sending communications. We're sending a newsletter to our community. There's a lot of ways that people can sign up for automatic text messages from the city, seeing if it's an option for us to do that as well for the clerk's office. If it's not, if we can't do that, making sure we are at least sending a newsletter out. And I also, believe that one of, the best ways to communicate too is making sure that our clerk's office website is easy to navigate and easy to find information, and so people can just go in and making sure everything is nicely organized. If you go to my website right now, mendozaforclerk.com, you can find how to request a mail-in ballot right away. When you go to resources, you can find how to register to vote, who your election official are. And we should have things like that in our clerk's website. It is important to understand that a lot of the things are run through the state or through the county clerk, so we do have to link to those, but making sure that the links are easily accessible.
Thank you. Cynthia Beebe, same question.
The best way to communicate effectively with people, of course, is in person, if and when you can. And I I'm hopeful that with vaccines and so on, we will fairly soon be able to go out into the community again, which I would make it a point of doing often and throughout the 4 years of the term. I would aim to talk to people and ask them what their concerns are, also to tell them what it is that we can do for them. And I am a professional communicator, and I would work to build on those skills. I agree with Stephanie. We should make the Evanston City Clerk website can be more helpful than it is. And again, I think it's incumbent upon the city clerk to initially provide information to residents and to staff. It's up to us on our website. We should have certain things, like particularly on elections, for example. This is what you have to do if you want to be a candidate. This is when voting takes place. This form has to be filed with the county or the state or whatever. We should provide information upfront to residents. Not that they'll never have questions, because of course they will. But if we can answer questions ahead of time and provide information ahead of time, that will save time and energy on everyone's part. And then when one person does have a question, we'll try to put that on a website, because you have to figure if one person has a question about something, so does someone else.
Thank you. Candidate Beebe, how will you and your office work with the Cook County Clerk?
Very well, I believe. I have spent an entire career, my professional career, working with other federal and state and local agencies, county agencies. I spent a lot of time over at Cook County. I know how government functions. I know how to get things done in the government. I know that it's incumbent upon the Evanston City Clerk to work well with the Cook County Clerk, because essentially they are the boss. Even though we do have powers as a home rule city, we have to cooperate with Cook County and the Cook County Election Board. From what I understand, some of Evanston's elections laws are a little bit unusual, and the way that we conduct business in Evanston for elections is odd, which is why we have so much confusion around elections all the time. I would work hard to see if we can get that fixed. And again, by working with the county and of course with the state of Illinois. But again, I made a career out of working well with government agencies. It would be relatively easy for me to walk right into the Cook County Clerk's office, to know what to do, to meet people, introduce myself, and to get things done to make Evanston a better place, and make it easier to vote, make it easier to run for office. I don't want people getting kicked out of office because they used the wrong stapler.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, how will you and your office work with Cook County Clerk?
Yes, I've had the enormous privilege of being able to work with the Cook County Clerk through my role as a political organizer. I found myself down there for just about every election in the past 6 years. So, one of the things is that, we want to make sure we get information to them in a timely manner, making sure they know who has filed to run for office here in Evanston. The reason why it's unique, right? The election law is unique in Evanston is because of the 1992 referenda for the mayoral candidates. That's really the only difference in the way that we conduct our municipal elections. And in that election, if 2 or more candidates run for mayor, then we automatically triggers a primary for only that specific election, and that doesn't apply to the other seats. When it comes to those rules are followed by state statute, because that referenda only applies for our mayor's race. So making sure I thankfully understand that, and I'm able to would be able to get that information over to the clerk's office as soon as possible. We see there's more than 2 candidates filing to run for office. But other than that, making sure we have efficient communication, making sure we communicate with them, what it is, what documents they expect to receive from our candidates, but way ahead of time, right? Like before people actually decide to run for office, maybe the summer before, making sure people have the right forms, communicate with them and ask them if any forms have changed or have been updated, because that actually does happen often. So, making sure we have efficient communication with them.
Thank you. Candidate Mendoza, should some responses to FOIA requests have redactions? Why or why not?
So FOIA requests have redactions, especially when it comes to the protection of private information. That is not a choice that is a state law, and we want to make sure that redactions are done appropriately when it does compromise private information. I think whoever is the person bringing that information in has to understand the difference between private and public information. I think that trainings for our FOIA officers, ongoing trainings are essential. And understanding that FOIA, it's there to make sure people have access to information, more access, not less access. If you read the statute, that's the act, that's what it says. It's there to provide people with more information rather than less. But I think that sometimes we have the people who are redacting documents haven't been properly trained or don't understand the difference between public and private information. So, that's, redactions when it comes to private information, that is non-negotiable. But when we're redacting essential information that is public, then that's when we have legal issues, things get taken to the state's attorney, and it's a bad reflection on Evanston, and on Evanston government, and it erodes trust in our community. So making sure we have proper training and making sure we're redacting the right things, is essential.
Cynthia Beebe, same question.
Yes, again, any FOIA request is a legal document. And of course, there will be redactions pursuant to the law. Sometimes there is just information that is not public information, and the public does not have a right to it. Having said that, a great deal of information the public does have a right to. And that's what the FOIA request is for, is to find that information. Lawyers usually determine what is or is not redacted in a FOIA request. If you don't like that lawyer's reasoning, you can appeal their decision to the city. You can appeal their decision to the state. But redactions are simply part and parcel of FOIA requests. There is certainly, there's no question that there are some things that in criminal cases, when anything involves a minor, that is not public information. People do have a right to privacy. And I think that's something that your average citizen has to remember, that yes, the FOIA request, the FOIA Act was a great tool. It was passed, I believe, in 1967. It's a fantastic tool for journalists. It's helped our country enormously. I'm a big fan of FOIA. I believe in the First Amendment, but it is also a legal document, and it has to be handled carefully and sensitively. And we cannot harm private individuals by releasing information that we're not allowed to release.
Thank you. Let's go to our closing statements, and let's start with Cynthia Beebe.
Oh, okay. I thought Stephanie was going to start, but that's fine. I have made a career out of public service. If you go to my website, bbforclerk.com, I write about my career a bit. I have made a career out of working with other federal government agencies. I know how to work effectively within the system and to get things done. I know that to work effectively means to communicate with people, which means talking with people. I am running for clerk so that I can help the city of Evanston. Again, I think we need a professional presence in the office. I think the city is going to be under a lot of stress. I mean, let's face it, the whole country is going to be under a lot of stress, but we need a professionally run office that can be a valuable asset to the city and to the city's residents. And to the staff and the city officials. We need to coordinate, we need to work together, we need to get things done. We need to help people when they need help. That's what our role is. We need to manage the business records carefully. I also want to work hard to make elections, laws, and so on clear to our voters, clear to people running for election. We want more people to run for city offices, not less people to run. And the way to do that is by communicating and providing information. And that's what I would do.
Thank you. Stephanie Mendoza, your closing statement.
Yes, I invite everybody to vote for me, Stephanie Mendoza, and to find out more about me at mendozaforclerk.com. I think as we move into recovering from COVID, I think it's important that we have someone in the clerk's office that has, focused on providing services to the community. I am a community service provider. I've worked at Connections for the Homeless. I currently work at Evanston Latinos. I have been working in our community and with grassroots organizations for a really long time. I'm a community organizer. And I think it's essential that we have someone in the clerk's office that can provide, new and fresh ideas, and also has, the ability to provide services through a racial equity lens. That is something that I can do not only because I have the lived experience, but because I've also taken many trainings to make sure that I am culturally sensitive and also understand how to provide services to all of our community members. We want to move into COVID recovery with essential making sure that we are providing the best services and make sure that we are making our office as accessible as possible, and that as we move forward, that we continue to provide some of these very essential new technology for people to be involved in our local government, continuing to provide services online, and so people know that they can always count on us to work for them, independently of whether or not they can get to our office
Thank you.
by foot. Thank you.
So our time is up for this forum. We appreciate your participation, whether you are a candidate or a voter. It's important to remember that for the November election, the turnout was over 70%. With this election, where your vote will have more impact, turnouts have historically been below 20%. Your vote could be the winning one for one of these candidates. Please remember to vote, whether it is vote by mail, early voting, or on election day, April 6th. Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.